The vast emptiness of space held many secrets, but none as urgent as the one that reached Earth on a quiet Tuesday morning. At the United Nations Space Command Headquarters in Geneva, the monitoring systems suddenly flickered with activity. An anomalous signal, weak but persistent, pushed through the cosmic background noise. Jack Perry, the night shift communications officer, nearly spilled his coffee when the alert flashed across his screen. He had monitored space for 15 years, and in all that time, nothing like this had ever appeared. His fingers moved quickly across the interface as he isolated the signal. "Command, this is Perry at Station 6. I'm picking up something unusual," he reported, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Sending it to analysis now." Within minutes, Captain James Walker entered the communications center, his tall frame casting a shadow over Perry's workstation. Walker had earned his reputation as Earth's foremost expert on deep space communications, having decoded messages from the farthest human colonies. "Show me," he ordered, his blue eyes focused intently on the screen. Perry pulled up the waveform, a strange pattern that pulsed with an almost deliberate rhythm. "It's coming from Sector 419, well beyond our outer colonies. No human ships are registered in that region." Walker leaned closer, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This isn't random. These patterns." He tapped a sequence on the screen. "They're structured. This is language." "Alien?" Perry whispered, the word hanging heavy in the air. Walker didn't answer immediately. He plugged his personal device into the console and ran his specialized decoding algorithms. The command center fell silent as staff gathered around, watching numbers and symbols flash across multiple screens. After 20 tense minutes, Walker straightened up. "It's a distress call," he announced, "and it contains coordinates." Admiral Frank Thompson, the aging head of UNSC, called an emergency meeting within the hour. The highest-ranking military officials from around the world gathered in the secure conference room, their faces grim as Walker presented his findings. "The message repeats in a mathematical sequence that can't be natural," Walker explained, projecting the decoded fragments onto the main screen. "We've only translated parts, but the meaning is clear. Someone out there is asking for help." General Laura Hayes, commander of Earth's Defense Forces, crossed her arms. "Or it's a trap. We've had peace for 30 years, but that doesn't mean threats don't exist." "If it is genuine," Walker countered, "we're talking about a civilization in danger." "They sent these coordinates." He highlighted a star system on the galactic map. "They're facing extinction," and reached out across space, hoping someone would answer. "We're not the galaxy's police force," Colonel Bill Martin argued. "We have our own problems here on Earth." Walker stood straighter, his voice gaining strength. "For centuries, humanity wondered if we were alone in the universe. Now we know we're not, and the first clear message we receive is a cry for help. What does it say about us if we ignore it?" The debate continued for hours. Finally, Admiral Thompson raised his hand for silence. "If this is legitimate, we have a moral duty to respond," he said slowly. "If it's a trap, we need to know who set it and why they're targeting Earth. Either way, we can't ignore this." He turned to General Hayes. "Activate the War Giants program." A collective gasp filled the room. The War Giants, Earth's most powerful military vessels, had been built after the colony wars as a deterrent, then mothballed during the decades of peace that followed. Massive, devastatingly armed, and crewed by the best military personnel, they represented humanity's ultimate expression of force. "Sir," Hayes said, "those ships haven't been deployed in 30 years. "Then it's time to wake them up," Thompson replied. "Captain Walker, you'll join the mission as communications specialist. We need someone who understands that signal." As the meeting dispersed, Walker stood alone at the window, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, someone was calling for help. Or something was waiting, watching Earth's reaction. Either way, humanity's peaceful isolation was over. The war giants were awakening, and nothing in the galaxy would be the same again. Deep beneath the lunar surface, hidden from casual observation, 5 massive hangars hummed back to life. Lights flickered on sequentially, illuminating the sleeping behemoths within. The war giants, humanity's ultimate weapons, had rested here for 3 decades, their immense power contained and forgotten. Until now. Admiral Elena Reyes stepped off the shuttle, her weathered face expressionless, as she surveyed the bustling activity around her. At 62, she had hoped to spend her retirement fishing at her cabin in Montana. Instead, here she was, recalled to duty for what might be humanity's most important mission. "Admiral on deck," someone shouted, and the technicians and officers snapped to attention. "As you were," Reyes said, her voice carrying despite its softness. She approached the observation window that overlooked the main hangar, where the largest of the war giants waited. The Thunderchild, her old command. The massive battleship stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its dark hull gleaming under the work lights. Unlike the sleek vessels of the regular fleet, the war giants were built for one purpose: overwhelming force. Their angular, fortress-like design housed weapons systems that could crack planets. "She's still beautiful," said a voice beside her. Reyes turned to find Captain Walker standing at attention. "You must be our signal expert," she said. Walker nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I've been working around the clock on the alien transmission. And I've decoded more fragments. Whatever sent this signal was desperate." He handed her a tablet. They mentioned hunters and devourers. They were being systematically destroyed. Reyes studied the information, her expression hardening. "Could still be a trap. Maybe. But that fear is reaching us across light years. Admiral, it feels real." Below them, a team of engineers swarmed around Thunderchild's main engines, removing the protective coverings that had kept them dormant for decades. The other 4 war giants, Defiance, Retribution, Valiant, and Judgment, underwent similar preparations in adjacent hangars. Admiral Reyes, a young officer, approached and saluted. Technical Officer Marcus Davis reporting for duty. Reyes returned the salute. "At ease, Davis. What's our status?" "The Thunderchild systems are at 87% operational capacity. We've replaced the outdated components and upgraded the weapons systems." Davis hesitated. "But there's something else you should see." He led Reyes and Walker to a sealed laboratory, where a team of scientists worked around a central holographic display. "We've been analyzing the signal's origin point," Davis explained. "These are scans from our long-range telescopes." The hologram showed a star system with 9 planets. One of them, once clearly habitable, was now surrounded by debris. "That planet suffered a catastrophic event approximately 45 Earth days ago," Davis said. "The surface shows massive destruction consistent with orbital bombardment." Walker stepped closer to the display. "The distress signal is still transmitting from the surface. Someone survived." Reyes studied the images, her military mind calculating trajectories and scenarios. "How long until we're ready to launch?" 72 hours, Admiral," Davis replied. "The crews are being assembled now." Throughout the lunar base, thousands of personnel, many pulled from retirement like Reyes, prepared for deployment. The best pilots, engineers, and soldiers humanity had to offer, gathering for what might be a rescue mission or a war. In her temporary quarters, Reyes reviewed the crew manifests. Each war giant required a crew of 500 to operate at full capacity, 2,500 of Earth's finest, heading into unknown danger. On the final day before launch, Reyes addressed the assembled crews from Thunderchild's command deck, her image transmitted to the other 4 vessels. "We don't know what awaits us at these coordinates," she said, her voice steady. "We hope to find survivors we can help. We prepare to find enemies we must fight. Either way, we carry with us the full weight of Earth's resolve." She paused, looking at the determined faces before her. The war giants were built to ensure humanity's survival. Today, we extend that promise to those who called for help. Launch in 6 hours. Dismissed. As the crews dispersed to their final preparations, Reyes stood alone on the bridge, watching as technicians brought the massive engines online. The deck hummed beneath her feet as Thunderchild awakened, ready to carry Earth's might to the stars, and perhaps into battle. 3 weeks of faster-than-light travel left the crew of Thunderchild tense and restless. The 5 war giants moved in perfect formation through the void, their massive engines bending space itself as they traversed the gap between stars. On Thunderchild's observation deck, Lieutenant Tom Fletcher stared out at the emptiness, his reflection ghostly in the reinforced glass. At 32, he commanded the ship's ground forces, though none of them had expected to actually use their training. Space exploration had been peaceful for decades. "Lieutenant," a voice called. Fletcher turned to see Technical Officer Davis approaching with a datapad. "We're approaching the coordinates. Admiral wants all team leaders in the command center." Fletcher nodded, taking one last look at the stars before following Davis through Thunderchild's maze-like corridors. The ship had been designed with warfare in mind: redundant systems, armored compartments, and enough firepower to reduce a continent to ash. In the command center, Admiral Reyes stood before the main view screen, her silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. The other team leaders had already assembled, their faces showing a mixture of anticipation and dread. "We exit hyperspace in 5 minutes, Reyes announced. "Sensors detect significant debris in the target system. Battle stations, just in case." Throughout the war giants, alarms sounded as crews moved to their combat positions. Weapon systems hummed to life, shields raised to maximum power. No one knew what awaited them, but they would be ready. Exiting hyperspace in 3, 2, 1, the navigation officer counted down. Reality seemed to twist, and suddenly the blackness of deep space was replaced by a star system in ruin. The view screen showed a yellow sun surrounded by planets, and destruction. The 4th planet, once clearly habitable, was partially shattered. Massive chunks of its crust floated in orbit, creating a ring of debris where cities might once have stood. "My God," Fletcher whispered. "Scan for life signs," Reyes ordered, her voice steady despite the horror before them. Davis worked his console quickly. Very faint readings from the southern hemisphere of the damaged planet. There's still an atmosphere in some areas, but it's deteriorating. Captain Walker approached the Admiral. "The distress signal is still active. Someone down there is still alive." Reyes nodded. "Lieutenant Fletcher, prepare a recon team. Full environmental suits and weapons. We don't know what did this or if it's still here." Within the hour, Fletcher led a dropship toward the planet's surface, accompanied by a squad of 20 elite soldiers and Walker, who insisted on coming to track the signal source. The dropship weaved through the debris field, the pilots skillfully avoiding chunks of what had once been mountains and cities. They landed in a valley surrounded by crumbling skyscrapers. The buildings were unlike anything human, curves and spirals of iridescent material that somehow remained standing despite the devastation. "Atmosphere is thin but breathable in an emergency," reported Sergeant Kate Miller, checking her equipment. "Background radiation elevated but not immediately dangerous." Fletcher nodded, signaling the team to move out. They advanced through the silent city, weapons ready, their footsteps echoing in the emptiness. "The signal's coming from that structure," Walker said, pointing to a dome-shaped building half buried in rubble. As they approached, Fletcher noticed strange markings on the walls, symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint blue light. "Walker, can you read this?" Walker studied the markings, similar to patterns in the distress call. "I think it's a research facility." The entrance was blocked, but they found a side passage that led underground. The interior was dark, lit only by emergency lighting that cast eerie blue shadows. They moved deeper, following Walker's signal tracker. In a central chamber, they found what they were looking for, and more. A lone figure hunched over a console, tapping weakly at controls. The being was humanoid but clearly alien. tall and slender with 4 arms and silvery skin that reflected the blue light. It turned as they entered, compound eyes widening. "It's still alive," Fletcher breathed. The alien raised one hand in what seemed a universal gesture of peace, then spoke in a raspy, clicking language that none of them understood. Walker stepped forward, activating his translation device. "We received your distress call. We're from Earth." The alien trembled, either from fear or excitement. When it spoke again, Walker's device processed the sounds. "You came," the translation rendered in halting English. "But too late for my people. The Void Hunters found us first." "Who are you?" Fletcher asked. "I am Krell, last scientist of the Luminary." The alien's eyes dimmed. "And you have just entered a war zone." The command center of Thunderchild fell silent as Lieutenant Fletcher's voice crackled through the communication system. "Admiral, we've made contact with a survivor. Calls himself Krell, claims to be from a species called the Luminary. He says the attackers, Void Hunters, might return any moment." Admiral Rice leaned forward in her command chair. "Bring him aboard immediately. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." "Yes, Mom. Preparing for extraction now." As the dropship returned to Thunderchild with its alien passenger, Rise ordered the war giants into defensive formation around the ruined planet. Sensors swept the surrounding space, searching for any sign of hostile forces. Communications Officer Wright, Rise called to a young woman monitoring the long-range scanners. "Any unusual transmissions?" Lisa Wright shook her head, her dark braids swinging with the movement. "Nothing yet, Admiral. Space is quiet. Too quiet, considering the destruction we're seeing." Within the hour, Fletcher's team returned with Krell. The alien scientist moved with difficulty in the ship's gravity, his silver skin dull with exhaustion. Despite his alien appearance, the crew could read the grief in his posture. In the briefing room, Krell used Walker's translation device to explain what had happened. "The Void Hunters came without warning," he said, his voice translated into flat mechanical English. "They devour worlds, strip them of resources, life, even history. My people were peaceful. We had no weapons to match theirs." "How many ships?" Rise asked. "Hundreds," Krell replied. "Like black stars, consuming everything they touch." As if summoned by his words, alarms blared throughout the ship. Wright's voice came over the intercom, tense but controlled. "Admiral, multiple objects just appeared at the edge of the system. They're moving fast, too fast for normal engines." Rise rushed back to the command center, the others following. On the main screen, dozens of black shapes had appeared, moving toward the war giants with frightening speed. "They found you by following your signal," Krell whispered. "They always return to finish what they start." "Battle stations," Rise ordered. Her voice rang throughout all 5 war giants. "This is not a drill. Unknown hostiles approaching." Across the fleet, crews raced to their posts. Weapons systems powered up, shields strengthened, engines primed for combat maneuvers. These ships had been built for this moment, to face threats beyond human imagination. "Enemy count at 100 and rising," reported Davis from his station. No response to communication attempts. Ray studied the approaching vessels. Unlike the blocky, practical design of human ships, these were smooth and curved, almost organic in appearance. Their surfaces absorbed light rather than reflected it, creating the impression of moving holes in space. "They're surrounding us," Fletcher observed, now back at his tactical station. "Then we break their circle," Rice decided. Valiant and Retribution moved to quadrants 2 and 4, Defiance and Judgment, maintain position near the planet. Thunderchild will advance to meet their center. The war giants moved with surprising grace for their size, splitting into the ordered formation. Thunderchild's massive engines pushed it forward, directly toward the approaching enemy. "They're accelerating," Davis warned. "Impact in 30 seconds. Hold position," Rice commanded. "Charge the main cannons." Across Thunderchild's hull, enormous weapon ports opened, revealing the planet-killer weaponry that gave the war giants their fearsome reputation. 15 seconds to contact. Davis counted down. 10, 5. Fire, Rise ordered calmly. White-hot energy erupted from Thunderchild's bow, a concentrated beam that sliced through the darkness of space. When it hit the lead Void Hunter vessel, the black ship simply disappeared, vaporized in an instant. For a moment, the enemy formation faltered. Then, as one, they attacked. Space lit up with weapons fire. The Void Hunters moved with uncanny coordination, pouring strange purple energy beams toward the human ships. Where the beams struck the war giants' shields, reality itself seemed to warp. Shields at 80%, reported the defensive systems officer. Their weapons are unlike anything we've encountered. Rays watched as Valiant and Retribution joined the battle, their own weapons cutting through multiple enemy vessels. But for every Void Hunter ship destroyed, 3 more seemed to appear. They're calling for reinforcements, Wright announced suddenly. I've intercepted transmissions, not language exactly, but patterns. They're surprised by our resistance. Good, Rice said grimly. Let's give them something else to be surprised about. Execute attack pattern Omega. The 5 war giants suddenly accelerated in different directions, their movements precisely calculated. As they moved, they fired simultaneously, creating a crossfire that caught dozens of Void Hunter ships. For the first time in centuries, humanity's full military might was unleashed among the stars. And for the first time, the Void Hunters retreated. Red emergency lights bathed Thunderchild's medical bay as Technical Officer Davis helped repair a damaged console. The battle had left all 5 war giants wounded but intact, a testament to their creator's foresight. Repair crews worked around the clock, patching hull breaches and restoring critical systems. In a makeshift laboratory nearby, Krell sat hunched over samples of Void Hunter debris recovered after the battle. The alien scientist moved with renewed purpose, his 4 hands working different instruments simultaneously. Their technology is partially organic, Krell explained as Davis approached. The ships are grown, not built. Davis leaned closer to examine the black material. Unlike metal, it seemed to pulse slightly, as if still alive despite being separated from its vessel. How do you fight an enemy like that? Davis wondered aloud. Until your arrival, no one had, Krell replied. The Void Hunters have consumed 12 civilizations that I know of. My people were part of a loose federation of peaceful species. We shared knowledge, art, medicine, but not weapons. We never believed we needed them. Davis frowned. This federation, could other members still exist? Allies who might help us? Krell's compound eyes dimmed. The Luminary were the last. The others fell one by one, over many years. The Void Hunters are methodical in their consumption. In the command center, Admiral Rice met with her senior officers. Damage reports and tactical analyses covered the displays around them. They've withdrawn beyond the system's edge, reported Lieutenant Fletcher. But our long-range scans show activity. They're regrouping. Captain Walker nodded. And according to Wright's analysis of their transmissions, they're calling for reinforcements. Wright studied the star map thoughtfully. How long until they return? At their demonstrated speed, less than 48 hours, Fletcher answered, and likely with a much larger force. Communications Officer Wright entered the room, her face grave. Admiral, I've completed the full analysis of the original distress signal. There's something you need to see. She plugged her data pad into the main display. The familiar pattern of the SOS appeared, but now with a complete timestamp. This signal, Wright said, pointing to the data, was sent 27 years ago. A heavy silence fell over the room. That's impossible, Fletcher finally said. The attack on this planet happened less than 2 months ago. The planet, yes, Wright agreed. But according to this data, the Luminary Federation has been fighting a losing war against the Void Hunters for decades. This particular signal has been repeating automatically all that time. Davis entered with Krell, catching the end of Wright's explanation. "Is this true?" Rise asked the alien directly. "Was this signal sent decades ago?" Krell hesitated, his silver skin flushing slightly darker. "The original call for help was sent when the first world fell. Our automated beacons were designed to continue broadcasting until help arrived or until destroyed. So this wasn't about saving your people," Fletcher said, anger edging his voice. "This was about luring someone else in to fight your war." "No," Krell protested. "The call was genuine. We did need help. We still do. I am the last of my kind because help never came. Until now." Walker had been quiet, analyzing the data. Now he looked up. "Admiral, I've been tracking the Void Hunters' movement patterns from the information Krell provided, and our sensor readings. They've been moving in a specific direction for decades." He highlighted a section of the star map, extending the trajectory. A straight line pointed directly to Earth. "We weren't responding to a rescue call," Ray said slowly. "Earth was their next target all along." The revelation hit everyone like a physical blow. They hadn't stumbled into someone else's war. They had discovered the enemy already en route to their home. "We need to warn Earth," Fletcher urged. "Send a ship back immediately." Rise calculated the distances in her head. At maximum speed, it would take 3 weeks to reach Earth. By then, the Void Hunters' reinforcements will be here, and we'll be overwhelmed. She looked at each face in turn. "If we retreat, we lead them straight to an unprepared Earth." "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" Walker asked. Rise stood straighter, her decision made. "We make our stand here. If we can't defeat them, we'll ensure they never reach Earth." She turned to Krell. "You've watched them longer than anyone. Help us find their weakness." "The Void Hunters fear nothing," Krell said, "except perhaps worthy adversaries. And you, humans, you may be the first they faced. Then let's show them what Earth's war giants can really do," Rise declared. "Because we're not just fighting for a fallen civilization now. We're fighting for our own." The war giants floated in the darkness of space, 5 sentinels against the coming storm. Repair crews had worked tirelessly, patching damaged systems and readying weapons. Now they waited, every crew member at their battle stations. Admiral Rise stood on Thunderchild's bridge, hands clasped behind her back as she studied the tactical display. The plan they had developed was desperate, perhaps even suicidal, but it was all they had. "Contact," Davis announced, his voice cutting through the tense silence. Multiple signatures appearing at the system's edge. The main screen lit up with incoming vessels. Not hundreds this time, but thousands. A swarm of Void Hunter ships stretching across space like a dark cloud. Rise took a deep breath. "Send the signal. Initiate Protocol Thermopylae." Throughout the 5 war giants, commanders received their final orders. The ships began to move, separating into predetermined positions. Unlike their previous formation, they now spread widely across the system. "All ships reporting ready, Admiral," Wright confirmed. "Defiance is in position at the gas giant. Valiant has reached the asteroid belt. Retribution and Judgment are flanking the main approach vector." "And the infiltration team?" Rise asked. Fletcher checked his tactical display. "Captain Walker's shuttle is away, using the battle as cover. The Void Hunters won't detect them among all the debris." Aboard a small, heavily modified shuttle, Walker and a team of 7 elite soldiers accelerated toward the center of the Void Hunter formation. Their vessel had been coated with recovered Void Hunter material, masking their signature from enemy sensors. "Remember," Walker told his team, "we have one shot at this." Krell's analysis suggests their ship's linked to a central command vessel. We find it, we might find their weakness. Inside Thunderchild's laboratory, Krell worked frantically with Davis, analyzing the recovered Void Hunter technology. The aliens' 4 hands moved with increasing urgency. "The connection between vessels is both technological and biological," Krell explained. "They share information instantly, like neurons in a brain." "Could we disrupt that connection?" Davis asked. Perhaps Krell manipulated a sample under specialized equipment. Every biological system has vulnerabilities. The battle began with devastating fury. The Void Hunters attacked in coordinated waves, their black ships swarming toward the separated war giants. But this time, humanity's vessels were ready. Defiance, commanded by Commander Ryan Foster, used the gas giant's gravity to accelerate, swinging around the massive planet and emerging behind a cluster of enemy ships. Its weapons tore through the surprised Void Hunters before they could react. Multiple enemies destroyed, Foster reported, moving to secondary target group. Across the system, Valiant and Judgment engaged their own targets, their massive cannons creating expanding spheres of destruction wherever they fired. Retribution launched swarms of automated drones that confused and divided the Void Hunter formations. But despite their initial success, the humans were overwhelmed by sheer numbers. The Void Hunters adapted quickly, changing tactics to counter the war giant's strategy. "Hull breach on Deck 7," shouted a crew member on Thunderchild's bridge. "Void Hunters have attached to our starboard section." "Security teams respond," Rise ordered calmly. "Prepare for possible boarding action." Throughout Thunderchild, soldiers moved to defensive positions as cutting sounds echoed through the hull. In some sections, black tendrils pushed through, seeking control systems. Meanwhile, Walker's infiltration team had reached what Krell had identified as the command vessel, a massive ship at the center of the Void Hunter formation. Unlike the others, this one pulsed with a purple glow. "We've attached to their hull," reported Sergeant Miller. "Cutting through now." The team breached the Void Hunter vessel, entering a nightmarish environment. Unlike human ships with their rigid corridors and compartments, this interior was organic. Pulsing walls, flowing fluids in transparent tubes, and surfaces that seemed to react to their presence. "Stay together," Walker ordered. "Remember the target." They fought their way deeper, encountering strange, semi-mechanical guardians that defended the ship's core. The team lost 2 members before reaching a central chamber where a massive structure pulsed with energy. "This is it," Walker said, scanning the organic machinery. "The coordination center." As Walker studied the alien technology, Defiance found itself surrounded by hundreds of Void Hunter vessels. "We can't break through," Commander Foster reported, his voice steady despite the dire situation. "Admiral, we're taking heavy damage." On Thunderchild's bridge, Rise received similar reports from the other war giants. The Void Hunters were too many, their adaptability too great. "Commander Foster," Rise said, "initiate sacrifice protocol." There was a brief pause. "Understood, Admiral. It's been an honor." On the screen, Defiance suddenly accelerated toward the densest concentration of Void Hunter ships. Its engines glowed white-hot as safety systems were bypassed, pushing the massive vessel beyond its limits. "Defiance is on collision course," Fletcher reported quietly. The crew watched as the war giant rammed into the enemy formation, its reactors deliberately overloading at the moment of impact. The explosion consumed Defiance and hundreds of Void Hunter ships in a blinding flash. Rice stood silent for a moment, honoring the sacrifice, before turning to her crew. "That's bought us time. Now we need Walker to find that weakness." Inside the Void Hunter command vessel, Captain Walker stared at the pulsing organic core. His team had set up a defensive perimeter while he worked to understand the alien technology. The walls around them seemed alive, reacting to their presence with subtle movements. "I think I've got it," Walker said finally, his voice tight with urgency. "The entire Void Hunter fleet operates as a single organism. This is its brain." He activated his communication device, hoping the signal would reach through the interference. "Thunderchild, this is Walker. Do you copy?" After several tense seconds, Admiral Rice's voice crackled through. "We read you, Walker. What have you found?" "They're vulnerable to specific electromagnetic frequencies," Walker explained, transmitting the data from his scanner. "Their biological components can't handle disruption at 15.8 MHz. Hit them with enough power at that frequency, and it should cascade through their entire network. On Thunderchild's bridge, Davis received Walker's transmission and turned to Reyes. "Admiral, we could modify our communication arrays to broadcast at that frequency, but we'd need to get much closer to their main fleet. And we'd need more power than we currently have available," Wright added. "After the battle damage, we're running at 60% capacity." Reyes studied the tactical display. The remaining war giants, Thunderchild, Valiant, Judgment, and Retribution, were surrounded by Void Hunter vessels. Defiance's sacrifice had created a temporary gap, but it was closing fast. "There is one way," Reyes said quietly. "The fusion cores." The senior officers exchanged glances, understanding immediately what she meant. "The Ragnarok Protocol," Fletcher whispered. Reyes nodded grimly. "If we deliberately overload all 4 remaining fusion cores while broadcasting at the target frequency, the resulting electromagnetic pulse would propagate through their entire fleet," Davis finished. "The energy release would be catastrophic," Reyes said. "For them and for us." The command center fell silent as the weight of the decision settled over them. "Is there any other way?" Wright asked. "Not with the time and resources we have," Reyes answered. She straightened her uniform. "Send the recall order to Walker's team. Then broadcast to all war giants. Authorization Reyes Delta 7-1. Prepare to initiate Ragnarok Protocol." While the orders went out, Reyes moved to a private communication station. She recorded a final message, her voice steady despite the gravity of her words. "This is Admiral Elena Reyes of Earth's United Nations Space Command. If you are receiving this, we have succeeded in our final mission. The alien force known as the Void Hunters has been neutralized, but at great cost. All 5 war giants and their crews have been lost. What we discovered here was not just a distress call, but an advance warning. Earth was the Void Hunters' next target. They have consumed countless civilizations before us, but they will consume no more. To the families of those who served on Thunderchild, Defiance, Valiant, Retribution, and Judgment, your loved ones did not die in vain. They gave their lives so that Earth might live. This is Admiral Elena Reyes, signing off." She encoded the message with the highest priority and set it to launch toward Earth in a specially designed communication probe. "Walker's team is aboard," Fletcher reported. "All war giants report ready for Ragnarok Protocol." Reyes took her place in the command chair one last time. "All ships, move to final positions. Prepare to overload fusion cores on my mark." The 4 remaining war giants pushed forward, forming a tight formation at the heart of the Void Hunter fleet. On each vessel, engineers bypassed safety systems and prepared their massive power plants for one final devastating release. "Frequency modulators calibrated," Davis reported, broadcasting at 15.8 MHz. Throughout the Void Hunter fleet, ships began to twitch and falter as the disruptive frequency took effect. But there were too many, too spread out for the broadcast alone to stop them. Reyes looked around at her crew, feeling immense pride despite the circumstances. "It has been my greatest honor to serve with you all." She took a deep breath and gave her final order. "Execute Ragnarok Protocol." Now, the 4 war giants simultaneously overloaded their fusion cores while broadcasting the disruption frequency. The energy buildup lasted only seconds before culminating in a blinding flash that expanded outward in a perfect sphere of destruction. The electromagnetic pulse, magnified by the specific frequency, ripped through the Void Hunter fleet. Their organic technology, so advanced in many ways, proved fatally vulnerable to this targeted attack. Ship after ship shuddered and went dark as the wave passed through them. And at the center of it all, the war giants themselves were consumed by their own final weapon. 3 months later, on Earth, the communication probe arrived. The message spread quickly across the planet, the sacrifice of the war giants becoming legend almost overnight. In a solemn ceremony at UNSC headquarters, families gathered as Admiral Thompson unveiled a memorial wall bearing the names of all who had been lost. At its center, a simple inscription read, "They went as saviors. They fought as warriors." In the end, nothing survived, except humanity's future. In the years that followed, Earth built a new generation of war giants, more powerful than the first. They named the first one Reyes and sent it to patrol the stars, a guardian against the darkness, a promise to any other threat that might emerge from the void. Earth remembers. Earth stands ready. Earth survives. The sky over New Washington was clear and bright when humanity's future changed forever. Captain Marcus Bell sat at his monitoring station in Earth Defense Command, sipping coffee and watching the usual traffic of civilian transports moving between Earth and the Moon colonies. It was his third consecutive night shift, and he was counting the hours until replacement. "Sir, I'm picking up something unusual," said Technician Ramirez, her voice breaking the quiet hum of the command center. "It's coming from deep space, beyond our usual communication channels." Bell put down his cup and moved to her station. "Show me." The screen displayed a wave pattern unlike anything in their databases. It pulsed with an odd regularity that seemed almost deliberate in its precision. "Is it natural?" Bell asked, though he already suspected the answer. "No, sir. The pattern repeats exactly every 12.7 seconds. Something intelligent created this." Bell's training kicked in. Alert Admiral Foster, then isolate the signal and begin decryption protocols. Within an hour, the quiet command center had transformed into a hive of activity. Military personnel rushed between stations while scientists from the Xenological Institute argued over signal patterns. Admiral Foster arrived, her face grave as she reviewed the preliminary reports. "It's definitely coming from Proxima Centauri," Foster said, pointing to the star map. "Specifically from their third colony world." Bell nodded. "The Proxima aliens have been our trading partners for 20 years. They've never sent an unscheduled communication before." The room fell silent as the main screen lit up. The chief cryptographer stepped forward, sweat visible on his forehead. "We've broken part of it," he announced. It's a distress call." The translated message appeared on screen. "Massive attack. Unknown hostiles. 3 worlds already lost. Weapons unlike anything. Please send help. They destroy everything." The message repeated, growing weaker with each cycle. "When did it start?" Foster asked. "That's the strangest part," Ramirez said. "According to our calculations, this signal has been traveling for 4.3 years. It's just now reaching us." The implications hung heavy in the air. Proxima Centauri was humanity's closest stellar neighbor. If something had happened there 4 years ago, and no further communications had been received, "Get me the president," Foster ordered, "and wake up the War Council." 3 days later, Captain Bell stood in the massive underground chamber where Earth's leaders had gathered. The room buzzed with tense conversation as military commanders argued with civilian leaders. "We haven't fought a real war in nearly a century," General Long said, his voice cutting through the noise. "Our active fleet consists of patrol vessels and scientific ships. We're not prepared for this." "What about the Titans?" asked a voice from the back. The room grew quiet. Bell had heard of the Titans, of course. Everyone had. The massive warships built during the Resource Wars, then decommissioned and placed in hibernation when peace finally came. For decades, they had orbited silently around Jupiter, maintained by skeleton crews and automated systems. President Alvarez stepped to the center of the room. "We've received 3 more fragments of the Proxima signal. The attackers are methodically moving through that system, destroying everything. The last message indicates they found star charts pointing to Earth." She paused, looking at each person in the room. "We have detected unknown objects moving at high speed toward our solar system. They will arrive within 8 months. The Proxima civilization is likely gone, giving their lives to warn us." She took a deep breath. As of this moment, I am authorizing full military mobilization and the reactivation of the War Titan fleet. Captain Bell felt a chill run down his spine. Humanity had enjoyed generations of peace, but the old saying echoed in his mind. Peace was never permanent, only a pause between conflicts. As he left the chamber, emergency alerts began flashing across every screen in the building. Operation Lazarus had begun. The Titans were waking up. The Jupiter shipyards had been silent for nearly a century. Massive orbital platforms circled the gas giant, connected by thin electromagnetic tethers. In these abandoned structures, humanity's most terrible weapons slept. Commander Jack Wilson stood at the viewport of the small transport vessel approaching the main docking hub. His eyes widened as the external lights illuminated the true scale of what waited ahead. "My God," he whispered, "they're enormous." The War Titans hung in the darkness like sleeping giants. 8 vessels, each nearly 5 kilometers long, their dark metal hulls reflecting the distant sunlight. They dwarfed every other ship humanity had built since the resource wars ended. "First time seeing them?" asked Engineer Rita Torres, who stood beside him. "The history books don't do them justice." Wilson nodded. "I've studied their schematics for years. Never thought I'd actually board one." Their transport docked with the central hub platform. As they stepped through the airlock, they were met by an older man with a gray beard and the worn uniform of the custodial court. "Welcome to Graveyard Station," he said. "I'm Caretaker Lewis. Been maintaining these old monsters for 30 years. Wilson saluted. "Commander Wilson, this is my engineering chief, Torres. We're here to wake up the Leviathan." Lewis's face showed no surprise. The order to reactivate the first of the Titans must have reached him days ago. He simply nodded and led them through a series of corridors. "The automated systems have kept the basic life support and hull integrity functioning," Lewis explained as they walked. "But the weapons, engines, and tactical systems are completely dormant. Nobody wanted these things to accidentally wake up." They reached a massive door marked with faded warning symbols. Lewis pressed his hand against a scanner, and the ancient mechanisms groaned to life. "The War Council sent 12 reactivation teams," Wilson said, "one for each system of the ship. We're in charge of the main reactor." The door slid open, revealing a vast, dark chamber. Lewis hit a switch, and overhead lights flickered on one by one, illuminating what looked like a small city built around a central column that stretched upward beyond sight. "The Titan's heart," Lewis said with something like reverence. "An antimatter reactor powerful enough to level a continent." Torres moved forward, her hand running along a dusty console. "This technology, it's advanced even by today's standards." "The Titans were built to end wars, not fight them," Lewis said. "They were meant to be so powerful that no one would dare challenge them." Wilson checked his tablet as it connected to the ship's systems. "We have 6 months to get this operational." The other teams are already aboard, starting on their sections. As they moved deeper into the reactor chamber, automated systems began to respond to their presence. Screens lit up, diagnostic programs launched, and the soft hum of awakening power filled the air. "There's something you should know," Lewis said, stopping suddenly. "These ships weren't just decommissioned because the wars ended. They were shut down because they were too dangerous." Wilson turned to him. "What do you mean?" "The integration between ship and crew goes beyond normal operations. The neural links, they change people." Lewis's eyes seemed distant. "I served on the Leviathan during the final years. The ship becomes part of you. It thinks with you, dreams with you." Torres looked skeptical. "That's just old spacer talk." Lewis shook his head. "You'll see. These aren't just warships. There's something more. Something alive." Before Wilson could respond, his tablet beeped with a priority message. He read it, and his face paled. "What is it?" Torres asked. "They've detected 3 unknown vessels entering the Kuiper Belt," Wilson said, his voice tight. "They're moving fast and not responding to hails. high-energy signatures consistent with weapon systems. Lewis's eyes narrowed. Then we'd better hurry. The Leviathan takes 3 months to fully awaken. Wilson nodded grimly. We don't have 3 months. We need this ship battle-ready in 6 weeks. Around them, the ancient reactor began to pulse with faint blue light, as if responding to their urgency. The War Titan was stirring from its long sleep. The Leviathan shuddered as its main engines ignited for the first time in 97 years. Commander Wilson gripped the railing of the bridge as vibrations ran through the massive ship. Around him, crew members worked frantically at stations that were a mixture of ancient technology and modern updates installed over the past 6 weeks. Reactor at 40% and holding steady, Torres reported from her engineering station. That's all we're going to get without a complete overhaul. Wilson nodded. 40% would have to be enough. Navigation. Release docking clamps and set course for Mars orbit. 1/4 thrust. The bridge crew, mostly young officers who had never served on anything larger than a patrol ship, looked nervous as they input commands. The ship groaned in protest, metal and composite materials adjusting to forces they hadn't experienced in a century. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Parker from the sensor station, "the unknown vessels have changed course. They're moving toward Neptune's research stations." Wilson's jaw tightened. How long until they reached them? Less than 12 hours at current speed. Not enough time. The Leviathan was the only Titan even partially operational. The others were still in various stages of reactivation, weeks away from being ready to move. The regular fleet was gathering at Mars, but those ships were designed for patrol and scientific missions, not combat. "We can't get there in time," said Major Collins, the tactical officer. "Even at full power, we'd be 20 hours out." Wilson stared at the main display, showing the solar system and the approaching enemy vessels. "What about the Neptune defense platforms?" "Automated railgun systems," Collins replied. "Designed to handle smugglers and pirates. Not whatever these are." Wilson made a decision. "Communications, send an emergency message to all Neptune stations. Full evacuation, immediate departure. Then contact Earth Command and inform them we're pursuing intercept." "Sir," Collins looked alarmed. "The ship isn't ready for combat operations. We barely have half the weapon systems online, and the crew is still learning basic functions." Wilson moved to the center of the bridge. "Full thrust, all engines. Navigation, plot the fastest course to Neptune." The ship lurched as the ancient engines responded, pushing the massive vessel forward with unexpected power. Warning signals flashed across multiple consoles. Hull integrity at sections 12 through 17 showing stress beyond safety parameters. Torres called out. "Commander, we're pushing her too hard." Wilson ignored the warnings. "Maintain thrust. All personnel, secure for high acceleration operations." Lewis, the old caretaker who had insisted on joining the crew, approached Wilson's station. "You're going to break her before we even reach the enemy," he said quietly. "She was built to fight," Wilson replied. "Let's see what she can really do." Lewis studied him for a moment, then nodded. "There's something you should try. The neural interface chamber. It's how the original commanders controlled the Titans during the resource wars." Wilson had read about the neural interfaces, but assumed they were long disconnected. "It's still operational." "I maintained everything," Lewis said. "The Titan was designed to bond with its commander. It needs to know you." The bridge crew watched as Lewis led Wilson through a small door at the rear of the bridge. Inside was a chamber dominated by a single chair surrounded by curved displays and unusual equipment. "Sit," Lewis instructed, activating systems that hummed to life. "The interface will scan your neural patterns and create a direct link between you and the ship's core systems." Wilson hesitated only briefly before sitting in the chair. Metal bands automatically closed around his wrists and forehead. "This will hurt," Lewis warned, "but only for a moment." Pain shot through Wilson's body as the ancient system connected with his nervous system. He gasped, vision blurring. Then suddenly, his awareness expanded. He could feel the ship, every system, every corridor, every crew member moving throughout its vast bulk. The Leviathan was no longer just a vessel he commanded. It had become an extension of himself. When Wilson opened his eyes, the displays around him showed information with perfect clarity. He could sense the problem areas in the hull, the strain on the engines, the optimal thrust patterns to reduce structural stress. "Send me back to the bridge," Wilson said, his voice oddly calm. As he returned, the crew noticed the change immediately. He moved with certainty, his hands dancing over controls with perfect precision. "New course plotted," he announced. "Engine configuration optimized. We'll reach Neptune in 14 hours. Torres looked at her readings in astonishment. "How?" "The engines are now running at 65% efficiency, but the strain on the hull has decreased." Wilson smiled slightly. "The Leviathan is awake now, and she remembers how to fly." The Neptune research outpost floated in the darkness, its lights flickering as emergency power systems struggled to maintain basic functions. Inside, the last 20 researchers gathered in the main hall, watching as their escaped shuttles were systematically destroyed by weapons fire from the alien vessels now surrounding their station. "They're toying with us," said Dr. Alan Reed, the station director. "They could have destroyed this entire outpost with a single shot." The others nodded grimly. Through the observation windows, they could see 3 massive ships, their hulls black and angular, hovering at different distances from the station. Occasionally, one would fire a precise beam that cut through another section of the outpost. "The data burst transmitted successfully," the communications officer reported. "Earth knows what's happening here." Reed nodded. "Then we've done our duty. Whatever these things are, Earth has the warning and the sensor readings we've collected." A sudden rumble shook the station. The researchers braced themselves, expecting the final attack. Instead, the station's few remaining sensors detected a massive energy signature appearing at the edge of Neptune's orbit. "Something's coming," the sensor operator announced, her voice tinged with faint hope. "Something big." The Leviathan emerged from its emergency faster than light jump, alarms blaring throughout the vessel as systems strained under the stress of the maneuver. Commander Wilson, still connected to the ship through the neural interface, felt the pain of overtaxed engines and stressed hull plates as if they were his own body. "Target lock on all 3 enemy vessels," he ordered, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. "Prepare main weapons array." Major Collins worked the tactical station. "Sir, the weapons are barely calibrated. We haven't had time to test." "Fire anyway," Wilson interrupted. "Wide dispersal pattern. Let's get their attention." The Leviathan's forward batteries discharged, sending dozens of energy pulses toward the alien ships. Most missed their targets, but a few connected, causing visible damage to the smallest enemy vessel. "They're responding," Collins reported. "All 3 ships breaking off from the research station and moving to intercept us." Wilson smiled grimly. Good. That was the plan. He opened a channel to the research station. "Neptune Outpost, this is UES Leviathan. Begin evacuation immediately. We'll cover your escape." On the outpost, researchers rushed toward the remaining emergency pods as hope replaced despair. Dr. Reed stayed at his post, coordinating the evacuation while gathering final sensor data on the alien vessels. "What is that ship?" asked one of the junior researchers, pointing at the massive human vessel now engaging the alien attackers. Reed stared in awe. "That's a war titan. I never thought I'd see one in action. They were decommissioned before I was born." The Leviathan shuddered as enemy fire impacted its shields. Wilson felt each hit through the neural link, wincing as damage reports flooded his consciousness. "Shields holding at 60%, Torres called out. "Their weapons are unlike anything we've encountered before. Some kind of focused plasma technology." Wilson directed the ship to turn broadside, bringing more weapon systems to bear. "Target their propulsion systems. We need to keep them occupied until the evacuation is complete. The Leviathan fired again, this time with better accuracy. One of the alien vessels lurched as its engine section took multiple hits. "Sir, we're picking up communications between the alien ships," reported the communications officer. "It's not a language our systems recognize, but the pattern suggests they're surprised." They didn't expect resistance, Wilson realized. They'd been attacking undefended outposts until now. The damaged alien ship suddenly accelerated toward the Leviathan, its weapon systems glowing with building energy. "Evasive maneuvers," Wilson shouted, but he knew the massive Titan couldn't move quickly enough. Instead, he directed all power to the forward shields. The alien ship fired, its main weapon unleashing a concentrated beam of energy that struck the Leviathan head-on. The bridge lights flickered as the impact transferred through the ship. Wilson gasped in pain as the neural link translated the ship's damage into physical sensation. It felt like his chest was on fire. Forward shields failed, Torres reported. Hull breach in sections 42 through 47. Emergency bulkheads holding. Through the pain, Wilson saw an opportunity. The attacking ship had drained its weapons for that single massive strike. It was momentarily vulnerable. "Main cannon," he ordered. "Full power. Target that ship now." The Leviathan's primary weapon, a massive particle accelerator running the length of the ship, hummed to life. The bridge crew held their breath as energy built to critical levels. "Fire," Wilson commanded. A blinding beam shot from the Leviathan, striking the alien vessel amidships. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the enemy ship split apart, secondary explosions cascading along its length as its power core destabilized. "One down," Wilson said, allowing himself a moment of satisfaction before turning to face the remaining two vessels. "Now let's show them what humanity can really do." The destruction of the first alien vessel changed everything. The remaining two enemy ships pulled back, maintaining distance as they reassessed the unexpected threat. On the Leviathan's bridge, the crew worked frantically to repair damaged systems while Commander Wilson, still connected to the neural interface, directed emergency teams throughout the massive vessel. "Evacuation from Neptune Research Outpost is complete," reported Lieutenant Parker. "All surviving personnel are away in escape pods, heading toward Triton Base." Wilson nodded, his eyes closed as he focused on the ship's damaged sections. Through the neural link, he could feel the wounded areas like bruises on his own body. "Status of the enemy vessels." "They're holding position at maximum weapons range," Collins answered. "Almost like they're studying us." Torres approached Wilson's command chair, concern evident on her face. "Sir, you need to disconnect from the neural interface. Extended connection is causing physical strain. Your vital signs are deteriorating." Wilson ignored her. "What's the status of our main cannon?" "Recharging. We'll have enough power for another shot in approximately 8 minutes." The tactical display showed the alien ships moving in a strange pattern, circling each other while maintaining their distance from the Leviathan. "They're communicating," Wilson said, sensing something through the ship's enhanced detection systems that the regular sensors missed. "Planning something." Without warning, both enemy ships accelerated, splitting up to attack the Leviathan from different angles. Their weapons fired simultaneously, energy beams slicing through space toward the human vessel. "Evasive maneuvers," Wilson commanded, but even as he gave the order, he knew the massive war Titan couldn't move quickly enough to avoid both attacks. Instead, he directed power to the lateral shields, trying to minimize damage as the beams struck. The ship shuddered violently, throwing crew members against consoles and bulkheads. "Hull breach on decks 12 through 17. Torres shouted over the blaring alarms. "We're venting atmosphere in the forward sections." Wilson grimaced as pain shot through his body, the neural link translating the ship's damage into physical sensations. He could feel the cold emptiness of space where the hull had been breached, the frantic movements of crew members trying to reach safety. "Seal those sections," he ordered. reroute power from non-essential systems to weapons. The alien ships were coming around for another pass, clearly confident after scoring successful hits. Wilson knew the Leviathan couldn't withstand another coordinated attack. They needed help. As if in answer to his thoughts, the communications officer called out, "Sir, we're detecting a new ship entering Neptune orbit." Wilson opened his eyes, looking at the tactical display. A small but familiar signature had appeared. The UES Defender, one of Earth's newest patrol vessels. Relatively small compared to the Leviathan or the alien ships, but armed with prototype weapon systems. "This is Captain Anna Diaz of the UES Defender," came a voice over the comms. "Looks like you could use some assistance, Leviathan." Wilson smiled through his pain. "Your timing is excellent, Defender. Take the ship on the left flank. We'll handle the other." The Defender accelerated into the battle, its more agile frame allowing it to execute maneuvers impossible for the massive Titan. It launched a barrage of missiles at one alien vessel, forcing it to break off its attack run. "Main cannon at 80% charge," Collins reported. "Target the remaining ship," Wilson ordered. "Wait for my command." The second alien vessel seemed to recognize the greater threat posed by the Leviathan. It changed course, accelerating directly toward the War Titan in what looked like a suicide run. "They're going to ram us," someone shouted. Wilson closed his eyes again, fully embracing the neural link. He could feel every system in the ship, every power conduit, every weapon. The main cannon wasn't fully charged, but it would have to be enough. "Divert all remaining power to forward shields and the main cannon," he commanded. "Fire on my mark." The alien ship closed rapidly, its own weapons charging for what would clearly be a devastating close-range attack. The Leviathan's systems strained under Wilson's commands, power flowing from life support, artificial gravity, and even engine control to feed the massive weapon. "Now," Wilson shouted. The Leviathan's main cannon fired, the partially charged beam striking the oncoming alien vessel. For a terrible moment, it seemed insufficient as the enemy continued its approach. Then, slowly, the alien ship began to break apart, its forward sections disintegrating under the particle beam's onslaught. But its momentum carried the remains forward, chunks of alien technology slamming into the Leviathan's already damaged hull. Wilson screamed as the neural link transmitted the impact directly to his nervous system. When the debris cleared, both vessels were severely damaged. The alien ship had been destroyed, but the Leviathan was listing in space, multiple systems offline. "Commander," Torres was shaking him. "You need to disconnect now." Wilson nodded weakly as Torres helped remove the neural interface connections. As the link faded, so did his awareness of the ship's systems. The pain receded, leaving only a bone-deep exhaustion. "The Defender reports they've disabled the third enemy vessel," Collins said. "Captain Diaz is requesting permission to board for assistance." Wilson leaned back in his chair, looking around at his battered but triumphant crew. "Permission granted, and send a message to Earth Command. Tell them the Titans remember how to fight." The Mars orbital shipyards had been a museum for decades. Now, they roared with activity. Massive industrial fabricators, awakened from long dormancy, constructed hull sections and weapon systems at a pace not seen since the resource wars. Workers in spacesuits moved across the skeletal frames of new vessels, while supply ships constantly delivered materials from the asteroid mining operations, hastily reactivated throughout the belt. Admiral Foster stood at the observation deck, watching the controlled chaos with grim satisfaction. Behind her, the holographic display showed the Leviathan limping back toward Earth orbit, still heavily damaged from the battle at Neptune. 3 enemy scouts destroyed, she said to the group of military and civilian leaders gathered around her. But according to the data recovered from their ships, they were just the advance party. Dr. Emily Wagner, head of the Xenobiology department, stepped forward. "The translation algorithms have processed about 60% of their communication logs. They call themselves the Harvesters. They systematically conquer systems, strip them of resources, and move on. "How many ships in their main fleet?" asked General Rodriguez. Wagner's expression darkened. "Based on the scout vessel logs, at least 200, possibly more." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had 8 war titans, and only 3 were operational. The rest of Earth's fleet consisted of patrol vessels, research ships, and civilian craft hastily being retrofitted for battle. "We need more time," Foster finally said. "The Leviathan proved the Titans can fight these harvesters, but we need all 8 fully operational, plus whatever new ships we can build." The door to the observation deck slid open, and Commander Wilson entered. He moved slowly, still recovering from the neural feedback he'd experienced during the battle. Despite medical objections, he had insisted on attending this meeting. "Commander," Foster acknowledged, "your assessment of the Leviathan's performance." Wilson straightened despite his obvious discomfort. "The Titan exceeded expectations, Admiral. Even at partial power, she was able to match the alien technology. But there are issues we need to address." He approached the central display and brought up schematics of the War Titan. "The neural interface system is both our greatest advantage and our most significant vulnerability. It allows for unprecedented control of the ship's systems, but the feedback during damage is severe." Medical scans had shown that Wilson had suffered neural damage equivalent to multiple concussions. Only his gradual acclimation to the system had prevented worse injuries. "We need to modify the interfaces on all Titans," he continued. "Create buffers that protect the commanders while maintaining the connection." Dr. Wagner studied the harvester ship designs captured during the battle. Their technology is focused on efficiency. They build ships to serve specific functions: attack, resource extraction, processing. The scouts we encountered were combat-specific, but relatively light on defenses. Foster turned to the production manager. "How soon can we have the remaining Titans operational?" "The Colossus and the Behemoth will be ready within 2 weeks," he replied. "The others require more extensive reactivation. 1 month minimum." "We may not have a month," Rodriguez said grimly. "Long-range sensors detect unusual activity at the edge of the solar system. Something's coming." Wilson moved to the window, looking out at the shipyards. "What about new construction? Can we build more Titans?" The production manager shook his head. "The resource requirements are too high, and the construction time too long. But we've recovered the plans for the Valkyrie-class destroyers from the war archives. Smaller than Titans, but built on similar principles. We could produce a dozen in the time it would take to build 1 Titan." Foster nodded. "Do it. Start production immediately." An alert sounded, and all eyes turned to the main display. A message from the Deep Space Monitoring Station appeared. Multiple FTL signatures detected. Estimated arrival: 3 weeks. The room erupted in urgent conversation. Foster raised her hand for silence. "The timetable has accelerated," she announced. "I'm ordering full military mobilization across all colonies. Every ship with weapons capability is to be brought into service. Civilian vessels will be retrofitted where possible." She turned to Wilson. "Commander, you'll oversee the modifications to the neural interfaces. We need every Titan at full combat readiness before the main fleet arrives." Wilson saluted, though the movement clearly caused him pain. "Yes, Admiral." As the meeting dispersed, Wilson lingered at the window. Below, workers were attaching a massive weapon system to a partially completed destroyer. The Forge of War had been rekindled, and humanity was preparing as best it could. But as he watched the distant sun glinting off the new warships, he couldn't help wondering if it would be enough. The harvesters had destroyed countless civilizations before. What made humanity different? The answer came to him through memories of the battle. The fierce determination of his crew. The unexpected arrival of the Defender. The way Earth's forces had immediately adapted to the threat. Unlike the peaceful Proxima civilization that had sent the warning, humans had never truly forgotten how to fight. The harvesters were about to discover that some prey bites back. The vast darkness of space beyond Pluto's orbit lit up with unnatural light. One by one, massive ships emerged from faster-than-light travel, their black hulls absorbing starlight. The Harvester main fleet had arrived. On Earth, billions watched their screens as the Defense Command released footage of the incoming armada. 217 vessels of various sizes, moving in perfect formation toward the inner solar system. Toward home. Admiral Foster stood on the bridge of the UES Colossus, the largest of the war titans. Around her, officers monitored systems and prepared for battle. The neural interface chair sat empty. She would connect only when the fighting began. "Status report," she commanded. "All 8 titans are fully operational, Admiral," replied her second-in-command. "The modified neural interfaces are functioning at optimal levels. The new Valkyrie destroyers are in position. 14 vessels total. Civilian evacuation to the underground shelters is at 97% completion." Foster nodded, studying the tactical display. The defense of humanity had been arranged in 3 layers. The Titan battle group would engage the enemy at Mars orbit, the Valkyrie squadrons would protect Earth directly, and the planetary defense systems, hastily constructed over the past weeks, would be the final line. "Communications, patch me through to all vessels," Foster ordered. She took a deep breath as the channel opened. Her words would reach every fighting ship in the system. "This is Admiral Foster. In moments, we will engage an enemy that has destroyed countless civilizations across the stars. They believe we will be next. They are wrong." She walked slowly across the bridge, making eye contact with her crew. "Our ancestors built these titans not just as weapons, but as guardians. They were created to ensure humanity would always have protectors when darkness came. That darkness is here." The tactical display showed the Harvester fleet accelerating, breaking into attack formations. "We fight today not just for Earth, but for every world these invaders have destroyed. For the Proxima civilization that gave their lives to warn us. For the future of our species." She returned to the command chair, running her hand along the neural interface that would soon connect her directly to the massive ship. "Remember your training. Trust your ships. And know that whatever happens today, humanity will not fall quietly." Foster out. As the communication ended, she nodded to the medical officer. "Prepare the interface." The neural connections activated, and Foster gasped as her consciousness expanded to encompass the entire vessel. She could feel every system, every crew member moving throughout the ship. The other 7 titans appeared in her awareness as bright points of light, their commanders similarly connected. "All ships, advance to engagement coordinates," she ordered, her voice steadied despite the overwhelming sensations. The human fleet moved forward, the massive titans in a spearhead formation with the smaller vessels flanking them. On the Leviathan, Commander Wilson felt a grim satisfaction as his ship responded instantly to his thoughts. The modified interface protected him from the worst of the feedback while maintaining the crucial connection. "Enemy fleet accelerating," reported the sensor officer on the Colossus. "They're launching smaller craft, hundreds of them." Foster accessed the targeting systems directly through the neural link. "All Titans, primary weapons free. Target their largest vessels first." Across the human fleet, massive particle cannons charge. The Harvesters, perhaps recognizing the threat, changed formation to protect their command ships. "They're adapting to our tactics," Wilson transmitted from the Leviathan. "Just as they adapted after our first encounter. Then we'll show them something new," Foster replied. "Execute Maneuver Prometheus." The Titans suddenly broke formation, each accelerating along a different vector. The unexpected movement confused the Harvester targeting systems, their first volley of energy weapons largely missing the human vessels. The Titans fired simultaneously, their main cannons unleashing devastation. 3 Harvester capital ships erupted in massive explosions as the beams tore through their hulls. But the Harvesters responded quickly. Dozens of smaller vessels swarmed each Titan, firing concentrated bursts at specific sections. Warning signals flashed through Foster's consciousness as the Colossus took damage. The battle expanded across the orbital space of Mars, a chaotic dance of destruction as human and alien technology clashed. The Valkyrie destroyers darted between larger vessels, their speed allowing them to strike and retreat before the harvesters could respond. On Earth, the Planetary Defense Command watched in awe as humanity's ancient guardians fought with unexpected ferocity. The Titans, created centuries ago and then put to sleep, had fully awakened, and they were magnificent in their wrath. Foster directed the Colossus through a complex, evasive pattern, feeling the strain on the massive engines. All ships continue to press the attack. We cannot allow them past Mars orbit. As the battle raged, a simple truth became evident to both sides. The harvesters had finally found prey that refused to be harvested. The sleeping giants of humanity had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. The night sky above the Lumari homeworld burned with the fires of destruction. Their cities, once gleaming with the soft blue light of their advanced technology, now glowed orange with uncontrolled flames. The Vortex assault had been swift and merciless. In the central communication tower of the capital city, 3 figures worked frantically. The tallest of them, Director Talus, stared at the display showing the approaching enemy ships. His normally bright silver skin had dulled to ash gray with stress and fear. "How much longer, Mira?" he asked, glancing at the engineer whose fingers flew across the control panel. "Almost ready," Mira replied without looking up. "The hyperwave transmitter is at 90% capacity." The third Lumari, a young tactical officer named Rallin, kept watch at the window. "The ground forces are breaking through the southern barrier. We have minutes at most." Talus nodded grimly. "We don't need to survive. We just need to send the call." The Lumari had been a peaceful spacefaring race for over 2,000 years. They had explored, traded, and shared knowledge across their sector of the galaxy. But they had never built weapons of war. They had never needed to. Until the Vortex arrived 6 months ago, demanding resources, territory, and submission. "Transmitter at full power," Mira announced. "The message is loaded." Talus placed his 6-fingered hand on the activation panel. "Let it be heard." With a deep hum that vibrated through the tower, the hyperwave transmitter fired. The message, a desperate plea for help encoded with the coordinates of the Lumari homeworld, shot out in all directions, traveling faster than light into the unknown depths of space. "It's done," Mira whispered. A tremendous blast shook the tower. The door to the communication room glowed red as the Vortex soldiers began cutting through. "Do you really think anyone will answer?" Raylan asked, his voice trembling. Talus stood tall as the door began to melt. "The old stories speak of warriors from beyond the outer rim. If even half the tales are true, the Vortex will regret the day they attacked our world." The door crashed open. The 3 Lumari faced their fate with dignity. 217 light-years away, on a small blue planet called Earth, Major Tom Reed was enjoying his coffee when the alert sounded. As Chief Communications Officer at Deep Space Monitoring Station Alpha, unexpected alerts usually meant equipment malfunction. Not today. "Sir," called Lieutenant Wilson from her station, "you need to see this." Reed crossed the room quickly. "What have we got?" "Unknown signal type, sir. It's not in any of our databases." Wilson's fingers tapped across her keyboard, but the AI is translating it as a distress call. Reed's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips. "From who?" "Unknown, sir. Not human origin. Definitely not human." The room fell silent. After centuries of searching the stars, humanity had finally received proof they weren't alone, and it was a cry for help. Admiral Banks arrived within the hour. Her weathered face betrayed no emotion as she reviewed the signal data. "And we're certain this is genuine." "Yes, ma'am," Reed confirmed. Multiple stations picked it up. The source is approximately 217 light-years from Earth. Banks nodded slowly. Who else knows about this? Just the personnel in this room and the other station commanders, as per protocol. Good. Banks straightened her uniform. This signal needs to be classified immediately. Top level. Reed frowned. With respect, Admiral, isn't this exactly what we've been waiting for? First contact. This isn't just first contact, Major, Banks interrupted. This is a request for military aid. That changes everything. She turned to her aide. Initiate protocol sleeping giant. Authorization Banks, Alpha 70. The young aide's face paled. Ma'am, that protocol hasn't been activated in. I know exactly how long it's been. Do it. As the aide hurried away, Reed stepped closer to Banks. Admiral, what's protocol sleeping giant? Banks looked at him with eyes that had seen too many wars on Earth. Something we hoped we'd never need, Major. We're waking up the vanguards. In the darkness of space, orbiting silently beyond Mars, a massive station received the activation code. Lights that had been dormant for over a century began to glow. Inside, in rows of cryogenic chambers, the first of the sleepers began to stir. Humanity's deadliest warriors were awakening. The old video played on the briefing room wall. It showed scenes from a time most people wanted to forget. The global resource wars that had nearly ended humanity 150 years ago. Major Reed watched as cities burned and armies clashed across continents. The final death toll had been in the billions. Humanity had almost destroyed itself fighting over the last oil fields, fresh water sources, and farmable land. It was at our darkest hour that the Vanguard program was born, Admiral Banks explained. When conventional warfare failed, the remaining nations pooled their resources into creating the ultimate soldiers. The video shifted to clinical laboratories where scientists worked on unconscious subjects. Reed felt a chill run down his spine. How many people know about this? He asked. Less than 50 worldwide, Banks replied. Most records were deleted during the Great Peace. The public wanted to forget the horrors we had created. The screen now showed training exercises. Men and women moving faster than seemed possible, lifting vehicles, enduring wounds that would kill ordinary humans. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural blue light. What exactly are they? Lieutenant Wilson asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Banks sighed. The term we used was enhanced humans, but there's something more. Genetic modifications for strength and speed. Neural implants for faster reactions and tactical processing. Bone and muscle reinforcements. Regenerative nanites in their bloodstream. They're weapons, Reed said flatly. They're soldiers, Banks corrected. The best humanity ever produced. They fought the final battles that brought the warring factions to the peace table. The video ended, showing a massive space station under construction. When peace finally came, society had no place for them, Banks continued. They were living reminders of mankind's darkest chapter, but the United Earth government couldn't bring themselves to eliminate them either. So a compromise was reached. The orbital platforms, Wilson realized. Banks nodded. 5 stations positioned beyond Mars. The vanguards would sleep in cryostasis until Earth needed them again. Most people alive today don't even know they exist. And now we're waking them up because of an alien distress call. Reed asked incredulously. Those are my orders, Banks said, her face grim. I don't like it either, but if there's a threat out there. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. In the void beyond Mars, orbital platform Alpha hummed with renewed activity. Cryostasis pods hissed open one by one as the revival sequence continued. Commander James Walker was the first to wake. His enhanced system processed the revival drugs faster than the others. Blue eyes snapped open, instantly alert despite a century of sleep. A medical robot hovered nearby. Commander Walker, your vital signs are stable. Cognitive functions at optimal levels. Welcome back. Walker sat up, his movements precise and controlled. The last thing he remembered was the cryostasis countdown. That had been. He checked the internal clock in his neural implant. 127 years ago. Status report, he commanded, his voice rough from disuse. Protocol Sleeping Giant has been activated by Earth Command. Full squad revival in progress. Current year is 2237. Walker swung his legs over the side of the pod. Around him, other pods were opening. His team was waking up. Marcus Jones, his second in command, was already sitting up in his pod. Their eyes met across the room. "Guess the vacation's over," Jones said with a grim smile. Walker stood, testing his muscles. The nanites had prevented atrophy during the long sleep. He felt as strong as the day he went under. "Why now?" asked Lisa Torres, the squad's tactical specialist, as she disconnected monitoring wires from her chest. After all this time, Walker looked at the large screen on the far wall, now displaying a message from Earth Command. "Unknown distress signal, non-human origin, possible first contact scenario," he read aloud. The room fell silent as the words sank in. "Computer, show me current Earth," Walker ordered. The screen changed to show a planet far different from the one they had left. The scars of the resource wars were gone. Cities gleamed with clean energy technology. The oceans were blue again. "They did it," Torres whispered. "They actually fixed it." Walker nodded slowly. "And now they need us again." He turned to face his team, now 20 awakened soldiers standing at attention. "Vanguard Unit 1, prepare for mission briefing. We've slept long enough." The forgotten warriors of humanity began to prepare for war once more. Platform Alpha, gazing at the Earth below. The planet looked peaceful from this distance. Clean blue oceans, green continents, and white polar caps. Very different from the dying world he had left behind. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Jones said, joining him at the viewport. "Hard to believe we once nearly destroyed it." Walker nodded silently. Their awakening had been complete for 24 hours now. All 50 members of Vanguard Unit 1 were up and operational. The medical robots reported perfect physical condition across the board, a testament to the cryostasis technology and their enhanced bodies. "The transport from Earth is docking," Torres announced as she entered the deck. "Official delegation aboard." Walker turned from the viewport. "Time to meet our new bosses." The Earth delegation consisted of 3 people. Admiral Banks, a nervous-looking scientist named Dr. Powell, and a civilian official who introduced himself as Director Mason from the United Earth government. Their faces showed a mixture of awe and fear when confronted with the vanguards. "You're taller than I expected," Director Mason said, looking up at Walker's imposing 6'7" frame. Walker remained expert forces reduced to peacekeeping roles. Dr. Powell stepped forward. "Yes, but understanding facts is different from experiencing the cultural shift. Humanity has evolved beyond warfare. We've focused on exploration, art, philosophy. And yet here you are." Torres cut in, waking up soldiers. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. "Perhaps we should discuss the mission," Walker suggested, his enhanced eyes noting the increased heart rates of their visitors. Admiral Banks nodded gratefully. "We've analyzed the distress signal. It contains coordinates, basic identification of the sender species. They call themselves the Lumari, and details of an attack by something called the Vortec Empire." Walker activated the holographic display at the center of the room. "Show me." The signal data appeared in the air before them. The vanguards processed it instantly, their neural implants translating and analyzing faster than any normal human could. "The signal is genuine," Jones concluded, "and they're losing badly." Director Mason cleared his throat. "We face a dilemma. Earth has no standing military capable of interstellar intervention. We haven't built warships in over a century." Walker looked at Platform Alpha schematics on another display. "You don't need to. The platforms were designed for this." The Earth delegates exchanged confused glances. "I don't understand," Mason said. Walker touched the display, highlighting sections of the orbital platform. "These aren't just storage facilities. They're dormant warships. The final contingency plan if Earth ever faced extinction or needed to project force beyond the solar system. That's impossible, Dr. Powell protested. These platforms were built as peaceful repositories. That's what the public was told, Walker replied. The truth is different. He entered a command sequence into the console. The entire platform shuddered. Sections that had appeared decorative began to shift and transform. Hidden weapon systems emerged from recesses. Powerful engines activated after a century of dormancy. My God, whispered Admiral Banks. Platform Alpha was always meant to be our transport if we were ever awakened, Walker explained. Built with technology decades ahead of its time, even by your standards now. Director Mason's face had gone pale. The United Earth government never authorized. The authorization was built into Protocol Sleeping Giant. Walker interrupted. You activated us. You activated the ship. The platform trembled again as more systems came online. How long would it take to reach these coordinates? Banks asked, her professional composure returning first. Walker studied the navigation data. At maximum FTL capability, 42 days. The Earth delegates huddled together, speaking in hushed tones. Finally, Banks turned back to Walker. The United Earth government has authorized a reconnaissance mission only. You are to investigate the signal, assess the situation, and report back. No combat engagement without direct authorization. Walker nodded once. Understood. After the Earth delegation departed, Jones approached Walker. Reconnaissance only. Against what sounds like a genocidal empire. Walker's face remained impassive. We have our orders. Orders from people who haven't seen war in over a century, Torres added. Walker watched as Platform Alpha, now revealed as Earth's most powerful warship, completed its transformation. We'll follow our orders, he said quietly, until the situation requires otherwise. Space bent around Platform Alpha as it dropped out of FTL travel. The massive ship, now fully transformed into its true form, entered the Lumeri home system with sensors at maximum range. Walker stood on the command deck, his enhanced vision taking in the tactical displays. What he saw made even his engineered composure falter. Destruction on a planetary scale, Torres reported, her voice tight. Multiple cities burning. Orbital installations destroyed. Debris fields consistent with recent space battles. Life signs? Walker asked. Jones checked the readings. Scattered populations in underground shelters. Several million survivors, but their numbers are dropping hourly. Walker zoomed in on a section of the main display. Enemy ships. 3 large vessels in orbit, Torres confirmed. Design unknown, but heavily armed. Roughly 20 smaller craft performing bombing runs on the surface. Walker's mind processed the tactical situation with inhuman speed. Prepare boarding shuttles. Full combat loadout for all Vanguard teams. Commander, Jones reminded him. Our orders were reconnaissance only. Walker turned to look at his second-in-command. The mission parameters have changed. We are witnessing active genocide. No one on the command deck disagreed. Incoming transmission, announced Lynn, their communications specialist. From the surface. Put it through, Walker ordered. The main screen flickered to show a Lumeri face. Silver skin, now smudged with ash and blood, and large eyes that widened further at the sight of the humans. You came, the Lumeri said in a halting voice, the ship's translation system working perfectly. The signal was answered. I am Commander Walker of Earth Vessel Alpha. We received your distress call. The Lumeri, who introduced himself as Valen, a military coordinator for the remaining resistance, explained their desperate situation. The Vortec had attacked without warning 6 months earlier, systematically destroying Lumeri defenses and infrastructure. We sent the signal into deep space as our final act, Valen explained, based on ancient records that spoke of powerful warriors beyond the rim. We never truly believed. These records, Walker interrupted. What did they say exactly? Valen's expression shifted. They told of a species that mastered the art of war like no other. A species so dangerous they locked away their own warriors rather than risk their power. The records were thousands of years old. Most considered them myths. Walker and Jones exchanged glances. The timeline didn't make sense. Humanity had only achieved spaceflight a few centuries ago. Someone visited Earth long before we were spacefaring, Torres whispered, and saw what we were capable of. Before Walker could pursue this line of questioning, alarms blared across the command deck. Enemy ships are moving to intercept, Torres reported. They've detected us. Walker made his decision. Bring weapons systems online. Launch defensive drones. All vanguards to battle stations. The ship hummed as systems dormant for more than a century activated. Commander, Lynn called out, we're being hailed by the largest enemy vessel. The screen changed to show a Vortec commander. The alien was reptilian in appearance, with gray scales and yellow eyes that narrowed at the sight of the humans. Unknown vessel, the Vortec hissed. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourselves immediately. Walker stepped forward. I am Commander Walker of Earth. We are responding to a distress call from the Lumari people. The Vortec commander's scaled face showed surprise, then amusement. Earth, we have no records of your species. Leave now or be destroyed with the rest of these weaklings. Walker's expression remained neutral. We will not leave. The Vortec laughed, a harsh, grating sound. Then you will die. Our scans show your vessel is significantly outmatched. Your scans, Walker replied calmly, are incomplete. He cut the transmission with a gesture. They're powering weapons, Torres reported. Walker turned to his crew. Defensive formation Alpha. Prepare to engage. He paused, then added, the Vortec have never faced humans before. Let's make sure they never forget this encounter. As the vanguards moved to their positions, Walker sent a final message to Earth, knowing it would take days to arrive. Earth Command, we have made contact with the Lumari. Enemy forces engaged in systematic extermination. Peaceful resolution impossible. Vanguard Unit 1 moving to intervene. The first Vortec shots flashed across space toward Platform Alpha. Humanity's deadliest warriors were about to show the galaxy why they had been feared enough to be locked away. Target their weapon systems only. Jones gave him a questioning look. Only weapons. We could end this now. We're not here to exterminate, Walker replied. We're here to stop an extermination. A swarm of small, sleek drones launched from hidden bays on Alpha's hull. They moved with incredible speed, evading Vortec defenses and striking with surgical precision. Enemy weapons at 60% capacity, Torres reported. Our shields holding at 92%. Walker nodded. Launch boarding teams. 5 shuttles shot from Alpha's launch bays. Each carried 10 vanguards in full combat armor, matte black suits that enhanced their already formidable abilities. Walker had stayed behind to command the operation, but Jones led the main assault team. Inside the lead shuttle, Jones checked his plasma rifle one last time. Remember, we take prisoners if possible. Earth will want information. The vanguards nodded silently. After a century of sleep, they were finally doing what they were created for. The shuttles approached the main Vortec vessel, dodging increasingly desperate defensive fire. Their enhanced pilots maneuvered with inhuman precision, finding gaps in the enemy's coverage. Breaching in 3, 2, 1. Jones called as his shuttle slammed into the Vortec ship's hull. Specialized cutting tools created an entry point in seconds. The vanguards poured into the alien ship. The Vortec soldiers that met them had never faced anything like these humans. Enhanced speed made the vanguards appear to blur as they moved. Their armor deflected energy weapons, and their strength let them tear through barriers with their bare hands when necessary. Jones led his team straight toward the bridge, following the ship's schematics their scanners had mapped. They encountered heavy resistance at a security checkpoint. Take cover, Jones shouted as Vortec heavy weapons opened fire. The vanguards responded with perfect coordination. 2 soldiers provided covering fire, while 3 others flanked the position. Their tactical implants allowed them to communicate silently, executing complex maneuvers without speaking. Within minutes, the checkpoint was secure. Most of the Vortec defenders were unconscious, knocked out by precision strikes rather than killed. Bridge ahead, Torres reported through the comm link from Platform Alpha. 20 life signs detected. Jones signaled his team to prepare breaching charges. Going in hot. The bridge doors exploded inward. The vanguards entered in a textbook assault formation, disabling the Vortec crew before they could react. The Vortec commander found himself pinned against a control panel with Jones' forearm across his throat. "Signal your fleet to stand down," Jones ordered, the translation system in his helmet converting his words. The Vortec commander's yellow eyes burned with hatred. "The Vortec Empire does not surrender." Jones increased the pressure slightly. "This isn't about surrender. It's about survival." Back on Platform Alpha, Walker watched as the other Vanguard teams secured the remaining Vortex ships. The operation had taken less than 30 minutes. "Incoming transmission from the surface," Lynn announced. Valen's face appeared on screen, his expression one of stunned amazement. "You defeated them." "Just like that." Walker nodded once. "The immediate threat has been neutralized. We've taken prisoners for interrogation. But the Vortec never lose," Valen said, his voice trembling. "Their empire spans dozens of systems. They'll send more ships when they learn what happened." "Let them come," Walker replied calmly. "Meanwhile, we'll help your people and prepare defenses." The communication with Valen ended, and Walker turned to Torres. "Status report on Jones' team. Main Vortec vessel secure. Minimal casualties on both sides. They're downloading the ship's database now." Walker allowed himself a small nod of satisfaction. "Send teams to the surface. Medical assistance first, then begin training any Lumari who want to fight." "Sir," Lynn interrupted, "we're detecting multiple transmissions across local space." The battle was observed by other systems. Walker raised an eyebrow. "Show me." The tactical display expanded to show nearby star systems. Many were sending communications toward the Lumari world. "They're asking about us," Lynn explained. "Word is spreading about warriors who defeated the Vortec." Walker considered this development. "Respond truthfully but carefully. We didn't come here to start a war, but we won't allow genocide." As the vanguards began landing on the Lumari homeworld, the stories of their combat prowess spread faster than light across the sector. Humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy not with diplomacy or trade, but by doing what they had been engineered to do: fight, and win against impossible odds. #airing the atmosphere, the third such arrival today. Another delegation. Jones checked his datapad. The Terran Collective. That makes 7 different species in the past week. Word had spread quickly about the warriors who had defeated the Vortec. Representatives from nearby systems had begun arriving, some seeking protection, others curious about these newcomers, and a few offering alliance. "Commander Walker," a Lumari aide approached. "The council is gathering. Your presence is requested." Walker followed the aide to the newly established meeting hall. Inside, representatives from 7 alien species sat around a large table. Valen, now appointed as the Lumari's main spokesperson, stood to greet him. "Commander, thank you for joining us." Valen gestured to the assembled aliens. "Our friends have a proposal." A tall, 4-armed being with purple skin stood up. "I am Ambassador Krell of the Terran Collective. We have suffered under Vortec oppression for decades. What your vanguards accomplished in one day, we could not achieve in years of resistance." Another representative, a floating ball of blue energy contained in a mechanical shell, pulsed brightly. "The Vortec will return. Our intelligence suggests they are gathering their main fleet. They cannot allow this defeat to go unanswered." Walker listened calmly. "We anticipated this. My people are preparing defenses." "Not just defenses," Krell said, leaning forward. "We propose an alliance. a coalition of all species threatened by the vortex. With your warriors leading our combined forces. Walker's expression remained neutral, but his mind raced. This went far beyond their original mission parameters. Such a decision would require authorization from Earth, he replied carefully. We understand, Valen said, but time is short. The vortex will return within weeks, not months. Walker nodded. I will consult with my superiors. Back on Platform Alpha, Walker sent an urgent message to Earth. The response came faster than expected. Admiral Banks herself on a direct communication channel. The United Earth government has reviewed your reports, Commander, Banks said, her image flickering slightly over the vast distance. The situation has exceeded our expectations. We need direction, Walker replied simply. Banks sighed. Earth is reluctant to be drawn into an interstellar conflict. However, we cannot ignore the humanitarian crisis. Your new orders are to provide defensive support only. No offensive operations against Vortex Holdings. With respect, Admiral, a purely defensive strategy will fail. The Vortex Empire controls too many resources. Banks was silent for a moment. What do you propose, Commander? A limited strike at their command structure. Their military is hierarchical. Remove the leadership, and their forces become disorganized. The Admiral's face showed conflict. The Vanguard program was created to defend humanity, not to police the galaxy. The Vanguards were created to fight wars that needed fighting, Walker countered. Wars that others couldn't win. After a long pause, Banks nodded. Very well. Limited offensive operations are authorized, but only to secure the Lumari system and immediate allies. Earth is not prepared for full-scale interstellar conflict. Walker sent acknowledgement, then returned to the coalition meeting. The alien representatives watched him expectantly. Earth has authorized limited support, Walker announced. We will help defend your worlds and train your forces. Relief washed over the gathering. But, Walker continued, defeating the vortex will require more than defense. We need to strike at their command structure, their leadership. Ambassador Krell leaned forward. The Vortex Supreme Commander directs all military operations from their flagship, the Dominion. It's heavily guarded, at the center of their fleet. Walker nodded. Then that's our target. As the meeting continued, plans taking shape, Jones approached Walker quietly. A direct assault on their flagship. That's a suicide mission, he whispered. Walker's eyes showed a cold certainty. We were never expected to grow old, Jones. We were made for missions like this. The coalition forces began preparations for the coming battle. The Vanguards, created in humanity's darkest hour, now stood as the unlikely saviors of species they hadn't known existed mere weeks ago. Walker addressed the coalition forces one final time. Today we fight not just for the Lumari, but for every species that values freedom. The Vortex believes strength gives them the right to conquer. Today, we show them true strength. The coalition ships moved into attack formation. Walker took his place with the boarding party. As commander, he could have stayed behind, but this mission was too important. Launch, he ordered. The battle erupted across space. Coalition ships darted between the larger Vortex vessels, using speed and maneuverability to avoid direct confrontation. Their goal wasn't to destroy the enemy fleet, but to create confusion and openings for the strike teams. Walker's shuttle slipped through the chaos, protected by drone fighters. The Vanguard sat in silence, each reviewing the mission in their enhanced minds. They would have one chance to reach the Vortex Supreme Commander. Approaching target, the pilot announced. Point of entry identified. The shuttle slammed against the Dominion's hull. Cutting tools burned through the metal as alarms blared inside the Vortex ship. Breach complete, Jones reported. Moving in. 20 Vanguards entered the flagship, Walker and Jones in the lead. The internal layout matched the schematics they had extracted from the captured Vortex database. They moved with precision toward the command center, encountering heavy resistance. Commander, Torres called through the comm. Coalition forces are taking heavy losses. "Hold position," Walker ordered. "We need 10 more minutes." The vanguards fought their way deeper into the ship. Their combat enhancements gave them advantages the Vortec had never encountered: superhuman speed, strength, and coordination. Still, the elite Vortec guards were formidable opponents. Walker took a glancing hit from an energy weapon, the blast scorching his armor. He kept moving, his nanites already repairing the minor damage to his body beneath. "Command center ahead," Jones announced. Heavily guarded, Walker assessed the situation quickly. Formation Delta. The vanguard split into 3 groups, attacking from multiple angles. The Vortec guards, despite their training, couldn't respond effectively to the coordinated assault. Within minutes, Walker stood before the massive doors of the command center. "Breach it." The doors exploded inward. The vanguard surged into the room, neutralizing the defensive positions with practiced efficiency. At the center stood the Vortec Supreme Commander, larger than ordinary Vortec, with scales that gleamed like polished metal. He held an energy staff that crackled with power. "So," the Supreme Commander hissed, "the mysterious humans have come to die personally." Walker stepped forward, removing his helmet. "We've come to end this war." The Supreme Commander laughed. "There is no war, only conquest. The strong rule. That is the way of the universe." "Not anymore," Walker replied. The fight was brief but intense. The Supreme Commander was powerful, but Walker had been engineered for combat at a level no natural evolution could match. His enhanced reflexes and strength ultimately overcame the Vortec leader's experience. With the Supreme Commander pinned against his own control console, Walker made his offer. "Order your fleet to stand down, and you live. Continue fighting, and none of you leave this system." The Vortec Commander's yellow eyes narrowed, calculating his options. Finally, he reached for the communication system. "All ships, cease fire. Stand down." Across the system, the Vortec fleet halted their attack. The coalition forces, though damaged, had held long enough. 3 days later, Walker stood with representatives from 12 species as the Vortec signed a formal surrender. The empire that had terrorized this sector of space for generations had been broken not by overwhelming force, but by precise, strategic intervention. Ambassador Krell approached Walker after the ceremony. "Your people have given us something we thought impossible: peace." Walker nodded. "It's what we were made for, in the end." "And now?" Valen asked, joining them. "Will you return to Earth?" Walker looked out at the stars. "Some of us will. Others have requested to stay, to help build the defensive network for this alliance." "And you, Commander?" Krell inquired. Walker watched as vanguards and aliens worked together, rebuilding what war had destroyed. His team had been created for destruction, but perhaps their legacy could be something else. "I think," Walker said quietly, "humanity's deadliest warriors have found a new purpose." Across the galaxy, word spread of the humans who had defeated the Vortec. Earth, once isolated and unknown, now found itself part of something greater, a protector rather than a threat, turning tools of war into instruments of peace.